How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another YouTube video. In this one, I'm actually talking about something pretty different. I just kind of want to speak just very openly and just create a good video for you guys on the topic of like being a young guy in the modern world, running a business, and my experience with pornography growing up, and what I've seen as a constant theme for a lot of young men. So, like, most of the people that I attract and do business with are other men. In the education side of my business, I tend to attract a lot of young men. And, I just kind of want to talk very openly about, like, what it really takes at a core level to grow into, running a business like this and having a good life. I get a lot of messages often from people saying, I don't just look up to you in business, but also look up to how you think and the way that you're living your life. And so I feel like it's kind of an obligation for me to just share some of my thoughts on how I perceive the world. Obviously, I'm 20, so I'm not that old, so I don't have that much life experience, and my thoughts could change. But at this time, this video is basically going to be a reflection of my thoughts currently on the topic of masculinity, pornography, and business. So it's going to be an interesting video. It's not at all like anything I've made. It's very experimental, and I just wanted to throw it out just because, hey, you know what? Screw it. I've got a bit of a platform, and I figured I want to use it for some good and help people think through their lives a little bit better. I've seen a consistent theme in my life. It's so green for some reason. You see how green that's showing up on me? Whatever. I've seen a consistent theme in my life. A lot of the men that I notice are the most insecure, that have the hardest time, being good to their lives and themselves and their businesses. They are the ones that struggle with addictions to pornography. It's just a constant theme. It's this virus that our world just doesn't talk about. And I by no means am intending on becoming an anti-pornography channel. It's not at all my niche. But I do just want to share my experience and talk about, what I've learned having at one point struggled with pornography. Having come out of that, the effects that it had on my motivation levels, purely, and I'm going to talk about it purely in terms of business. I could go down a whole other route in this video and talk about the spiritual effects that it has on you, the emotional effects it has on you, the effects that it has on your relationships, how you view women, and all these things. Pornography is one of the worst things to happen to young men ever. How accessible it is and how easy it is to access. You just get on Google and you find some in 30 seconds. It's pretty crazy, So, yeah, I think I just want to talk about how it actually has helped me grow my business to eliminate it and to get it out of my peripheral. There's going to be a lot of ums in this video because this is not a topic that I talk about much, so I'm going to have to do a lot of thinking. So I hope you guys can appreciate that. But let's get into it. So I have a whiteboard pulled up on my screen here. I'm just going to write some core themes here. So let me talk about motivation levels. Motivation. I'm going to talk about desire. At our core level, men, if they're getting, sexual pleasure without, earning it from an actual woman, it just destroys everything. And how, I'm going to talk about Adam and Eve. Whoops. And Eve, so for those of you who don't know, I am a Christian. And even if you don't believe that God is who he said he is and that the Bible is true, you can appreciate the sentiment that comes behind, the tales of Adam and Eve and the sorts of biblical ideas and ideologies and theology that comes out of that. And then I'm going to talk a bit about, and I don't have much time to do this, unfortunately. I may make a longer video if you guys ask for it. Motivation, desire, Adam and Eve, and yeah, I think there's some good topics. There's some good key ideas. So I'm going to start with Adam and Eve, and I'm going to start with this concept of the forbidden fruit. So the forbidden fruit, for those of you who don't know, the Genesis story, God places Adam on the earth, and his first instruction to Adam is to subdue the earth and tend to it. Then he realizes that, it's probably not good for Adam to be alone. Why would I only want one man when I can actually have tons of them? So he creates Eve. And Adam and Eve, are in this garden. It's a sanctified area. No sin, and sin represents, the evil that mankind naturally creates. Sin is a Greek word for having missed a target. So, it would be used in the context of archers. So sin is a really hard-hitting word, but when you see it in context, it's just there's a target, and man has missed the target because of sin. So the forbidden fruit is this idea that God placed a single tree in the garden or a bush or whatever with a fruit on it that was not supposed to be eaten. And there's supposedly my thoughts is that there was nothing really necessarily magic about the fruit. There was nothing it wasn't some crazy concoction of a fruit. It was just that it was really tempting, and God said, don't do it. And he was just testing how much we trust him. So do we or do we not trust God? That's just a very core, thing. It's kind of like a parent, trusting their kid with, a responsibility. It's all right, hey, here's, the keys to my car. Don't go wreck it. Except in this case, it's, there's very little to no, typically there's little to no consequence in eating a fruit. But in this case, there was massive consequences simply because we were instructed not to eat of it. Eve eats the fruit first. This is very important. And then gives Adam a bite as well. Adam's right there, shoulder to shoulder. If you read the story in Genesis in Hebrew, it's not just that Adam was present. It was literally that Adam was right there with Eve while she picked the fruit and gave some to Adam as well. Of course, they were tempted by the serpent, which represents, Satan, or, ultimate evil, which is kind of turning away from God. That's ultimate evil. So Eve gives Adam some of this fruit. Adam partakes. Eve partakes. Boom, sin is entered into the world. Ever since Adam took a bite of that apple and let Eve make this mistake, because, his role is to lead, and he let Eve screw this thing up, which is really on him, men have been trying to catch up ever since. We've been broken. We've got, every man has some sort of a wound, growing up. I don't care how healthy of a household you grew up in, even if whether you grew up with the lacking of a father figure, or you had a father figure in your household, because masculinity bestows masculinity. Every man is catching up. We're all trying to do something to prove ourselves now. This is why men love football, or men love, business, or men love different things like this. It's just it's just kind of a field for us to test ourselves in. And every now and again we feel fully capable, and then, right after it we are reminded that we're incapable at our core because we're broken. And ever since, we allowed Eve to partake in the forbidden fruit, whether it was an apple or a banana, who knows, nobody cares. We've forever since been trying to catch up because God bestowed on us this responsibility. Hey, go subdue the earth, go take care of it. This is my creation. I need you to do well with it. And then, barely into our relationship with this thing that we've been given, we just ruin it. So we've just been guilty about that ever since. And this might seem theoretical, you might be I've never felt guilty about Adam eating the apple. It's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, man has always messed up. And we're always trying to catch up for stupid things we've done. I have this recurring dream that I borrow my family's car or something, and I wreck it. because I've been in one car accident, and it's the most demasculized I've ever felt. Like I also started to learn how to drive a motorcycle, and within like a month of trying, I wrecked it too. So I've always felt like kind of demasculinized, if that's the right word, like demasculated behind the wheel of a vehicle, right? So like I want to get this cool car. It's an MG Midget, and it's a manual transmission. It's a classic car. And I so badly want to be able to drive this freaking thing, but it also scares me because I'm like, frick, like what if I wreck it too? And I've got this history of wrecking vehicles. I've wrecked 2 now. So I have to be really careful with that. And it's now one of the deepest insecurities that I have. It's like my incapability behind the wheel of a vehicle. And so what does this have to do with pornography? Well, men who feel incapable resort to the feminine. They resort to the fake, manufactured high and validation. Ultimately, it's validation. It's not even the dopamine high of an orgasm or anything like that. It's purely just the feeling of being valid. A woman giving herself to you as a man is the greatest accomplishment you can achieve. It's like, she's like submitting herself, saying, you know what, I'm yours, lead me, guide me, and then the sexual environment as well, that's, we see that portrayed as well. So, in most pornographies, I hate to get gross like this, but the man is leading the woman, typically being pretty abusive, actually, and that can, there's distortions of the role that men are supposed to play in that. But the man leads, and for a woman to submit and give herself to the man, that's like the greatest accomplishment a man can have, and they have to earn it. Like in today's culture, we have a lot of women becoming more masculine, and we have a lot of men becoming more feminine. And it's because, for the most part, men don't now know what they need to do in order to be capable. And women don't know where to find men that are capable. They're few and far in between. And, even myself, I'm like, frick, business is the only thing I can really turn to because, we live in such a hypnotized, passive culture. And our problems aren't real problems. The most attractive thing to a woman is a man in uniform, or a man with medals from the army or something. It's like he's admired by other men, so therefore he has status, and that status is incredibly attractive. So yeah, and the role that pornography plays, I used to struggle with pornography, and it wasn't until I kicked it that I even started to develop myself as a person. Pornography, it gives you your subconscious doesn't know the difference. You gotta understand, your subconscious does not know the difference between being with a woman, getting married, having sex, and just watching porn. So you're giving yourself, subconsciously, you're sending a signal to yourself saying, I'm worthy at this state, and at the time I was just freaking playing Minecraft all the time or whatever. I didn't even realize I was messing myself up so much. And I was basically just sending this subconscious signal to myself, yeah, you're worthy. You don't need to do or be any more than you are right now. And this is such a dangerous theme in our culture. You are good as you are. As you are good inherently, and you don't need to change. And accepting yourself, just accept yourself. Such a dangerous, idea for our culture, particularly for men. I think it's less dangerous for women, but obviously, a lot of people would call that a bigoted, sexist opinion. But yeah, particularly for men, this idea that you are good the way that you are is not at all a good message, and pornography drills it into your brain oh, you're good, you are worthy enough to have these women, all of them. Pornography, it's not just one woman you're looking at over, it's multiple women. Forgetting the sex trafficking that happens because of the industry, forgetting the spiritual issues with it. Forgetting all these, like, purely in terms of your motivation as a man, it just ruins you. It totally freaking ruins you. It just messes you up permanently. And it's really hard to come back out of. So that's Adam and Eve, and that's the forbidden fruit idea. And, the forbidden fruit can really be equated now to, porn. It's the forbidden fruit. We're not really supposed to have, done that to women. Like, we're not really supposed to have, productized sexual transactions between men and women. But we have, because we're broken. And then motivation. Motivation levels are totally destroyed when you are actively engaging in pornography. And this goes as well, by the way, for prostitution. A lot of people say, it's like, I literally heard the opinion before, prostitution is a pure transaction because, men and women, they both know what they want, and, it's easier that way. There's no commitment. But that completely ignores the duality of, masculinity and femininity. It might, in some cases, be easier for the masculine, but it completely destroys the feminine long term. If all our culture did was just do prostitution, we wouldn't have a culture. We need committal male-female relationships for our culture to work. So it destroys your motivation. Pornography just destroys your motivation. It creeps in like a virus and tells you you are enough. You don't need to change. Stay the way you are. And, women pour themselves out for you, even as a, broken 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old guy with nothing going for you. You're still good enough. It's a very dangerous message to be receiving. So then desire. What's interesting is our brains, they work on these short-term feedback loops. So we take an action. Let's say, we look at porn, for example. That's a negative. It can also be positive, working on your business or something. And then we get a response from that action, an immediate short-term response, how we feel in that moment. And then we take that into account, and then we act again. And this can either be a negative or a positive loop. So a negative loop is looking at porn, having a dopamine hit, and then doing it again the next day, and then more, and then more, and more, and then it becomes an addiction. A positive one is for me, it's working on my business, developing our products and services, making a sale. I like the feeling of making a big sale. So then I take that feedback, and I go back out, and I do it again, over and over and over and over again. It's a really good book called The Power of Habit, which talks about habit loops and how habit loops control our lives. So, goals don't matter as much as habits. If you really want to achieve things, you don't set a goal. You reverse engineer that goal and turn it into its constituent habits that are required of you, and then you adopt those habits, and then you'll reach the goal eventually. So what porn does is it gives us this really short-term minded thinking, short-term thinking mind. We can't break out of a week-long bubble. I'm sure you've noticed in your own life if you struggle with it, or if you know somebody who has, or maybe it's not even porn, maybe it's some form of addiction of some video games, for example, even. They don't think later than a week out. They never are thinking any later than a week out. They're oh, next week I work 8 hours a day at my job at the gas station or whatever. Or, I have this assignment due and I'm stressing out over it. Or they're never all right, what does my trajectory look like if I take it a decade out? They never ask that question. And it's because they're in this short-term mentality. They're looking at today's results of today's labor, this week's results of this week's labor, this month's result of this month's labor. So what pornography does is it shifts your desires from being long-term to short-term. Now, humans are naturally short-term thinkers, so to have a long-term desire and a long-term aim is a hard thing to achieve. But porn certainly doesn't help, because you can just whip out your phone and boom, you're validated and you've got a dopamine hit. You don't have to work on yourself. It just shuts you down. Yeah. So I think this is most of the ideas that I kind of wanted to share, because if you really honestly if you really want to do well in business, or if you really just in life in general, even though we're a nearly $1 million a year business, I still really don't even think I'm that big of a business. I know people that do way more, and I feel like there's so much more for me to do, and there's so much further for me to grow. So, I like to think that, where I'm at, is by no means even, it doesn't really even make me that much of an expert, even though a lot of people would disagree with me there. They buy my products. But, what happens is, I wouldn't be where I'm at if it weren't for me kicking this habit, straight off. And a lot of the people that are attracted to the things that I sell that help entrepreneurs are other young men. And, they are just not aware of the effect that these decisions are having on them. They have no idea how screwed they are. The best business decision you can make is to cut pornography, and if you drink it all, cut alcohol, and then have good relationships in your life. Those are the best decisions you can make as a business owner, because then it gives you a clear mind. It gives you the ability to actually think long term too, and make good decisions and solve problems. Because otherwise, you're just thinking about today's labor and today's results. People, there's men who premeditate when they're going to go look at porn. They have this, time of the week where they go do it, or time of the day even where they go do it. It's there's this half hour to 45-minute period before bed where nobody touches me or needs to talk to me or whatever, and I could be alone and I can go do it. Husbands of wives. There's stories out there. And really what that's doing is making you think short term. Nonetheless, is it affecting the relationship you have with women in your life, but I won't even get into that. It's just totally destroying your brain. And I know women look at pornography too, but I'm not here to be PC. I'm just here to say it how I read it. And that's that, it's destroying lives, and it's going to destroy your life if you keep doing it. And if I really want to have an army of people that are succeeding following me, I need to make this video. I need to make this video and other videos like it. There's a couple more coming out on other topics similar, but I thought, hey, why not start with the deepest hitting one, which is pornography. After that, I want to make a video on relationships, how to manage relationships in your life. What does my personal life look like, and how do I, build my life around my business so that I can devote to it. But yeah, we've got plenty more coming like this. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Just want to make a very transparent video on this topic. Yeah, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I just want you to understand that there's no such thing as business problems. There's only such things as you problems, personal problems that kind of end up in your business or that reflect in your business. So if you're a person who has a hard time with commitment, you're not going to do well in business. If you're a person that has a hard time making decisions, you're not going to do well in business. If you're a person that, looks at pornography and thinks very short term and feels validated and doesn't feel the need to change because of it, you're not going to do well in business. Because, business is an interesting environment. You only get paid when the market decides that you're worthy of it. And the market is this unrelenting, unforgiving force. It has no empathy, no sympathy, no empathy. It's not going to give you money just because you need it. It's going to reward you because you've given it something that it wants. And so to be able to think outside of your immediate biological needs is one of the most powerful spiritual and emotional skills you can develop as a business owner. And it's really hard to do that when you have a porn problem or a meth problem or whatever, a video game problem even. So, yeah, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. I got to cut it off here. I'm getting to another meeting, so I have to get going. But thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll make more like it soon. See ya.